Yes. All right, we're live.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. Good evening and welcome to the April 7th Township Committee meeting. We will now salute the flag.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic
States of America.
for which
which
it
it
For
stands,
which it stands.
One
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty and
and
justice
for all.
for all. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2020 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 9, 2019, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mr. DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Lembrick?
Here.
Mayor McGee?
Here. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public. And whereas Section 7A provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting, and whereas desired the governing body to comply with provisions that at the same time conduct it in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in deliberations of the governing body by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, to limit the public to the observations of the actions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. And again, good evening. We'll go through tonight's agenda, and then we will start the meeting. We have our first public comment on agenda items only, which I will now review. And then we will have our Board of Health meeting. After that, we have 3 ordinances on final. The first is an ordinance regarding the licensing and regulating for the sale of vaping products. Our second ordinance on final is to regulate the use of certain non-reusable food and beverage accessories, so plastic straws, stirrers, and single-use food and beverage accessories. Our third and final ordinance on final passage is to amend Chapter 123 of the Code entitled Fees, which is essentially to establish sewer fees beginning this year in 2020. We have 2 new ordinances tonight. The first ordinance is an ordinance for bond ordinance approving capital improvements. And our second ordinance is also a bond ordinance providing for sewer improvements. After that, we'll hear from our departments, and then we will go into our administrative reports from our township administrator, our township attorney, and our township clerk. Afterwards, we will hear from our elected officials. They will provide their reports. We have one discussion item this evening, which is regarding the Burdorf plan. Mr. Daffis will lead that discussion. Then we will go into our consent agenda. Tonight we have 27 items, a very array of various important initiatives for the township. We'll be adopting the health across all policies in the township of Maplewood. We'll be approving participation in New Jersey's Safe and Secure Communications Program, which is a criminal justice initiative. We will also be awarding a contract for fuel dispensing with credit cards for this year and next year. That's Wawa. We'll change orders number 6, 7, 8, and 9 for 60 Woodland Road Exit Stair Addition. Then we'll go into several engineering resolutions, including awarding a contract for ADA compliant ramps in various locations versus street roadway improvements, a contract for the restoration of Memorial Park bridges. We'll also award a contract for Boynton Avenue sanitary sewer work, emergency repair, And then the fifth and final contract will be for ADA compliant ramps in various locations in town. Then we'll go into an assortment of finance resolutions, bills and claims. We'll amend the temporary budget, a resolution approving our temporary capital budget. We'll also have several appointments as well. We'll be appointing Phoenix Advisors as our financial advisor. We'll also authorize a refund of a tax overpayment, and then authorize a refund of a second tax overpayment. And then we have some HR issues that we will address. We'll authorize payment to an officer. We'll authorize payment to one of our tax assessor. We'll be fixing salary and title for 2020 merit increases. And we also will be confirming the allocation of funds from the Open Space Trust Fund for an intern. Then at that point, we will go through 5 appointments. We'll be appointing the head of the Department of Engineering and Public Works, Mr. Paul Kittner. We'll be appointing the Superintendent of Public Works for the Department of Engineering and Public Works, which is Mr. Cedric Riccardi. We'll be appointing a Parks and Rec tree foreman for the Department of Engineering and Public Works, that's Michael Haran. And we'll be appointing a custodian for the Township of Maplewood's Town Hall Engineering and Public Works, which will be Ms. Anna Lopez. And finally, we'll be appointing a full-time health nurse, a public health nurse in the Department of Community Services, which is Anna Markova. At that point, our final resolution is another one regarding the EFT fees, which we'll talk about in the department reports. And then we will approve our closed meeting minutes from December through mid-February. Have a second final public comment, and then we will finally adjourn. So as you see, we have quite a robust agenda, even though we're doing a digital meeting, and so we will now get started. So, Mr. Waltz, do we have anyone with a comment regarding an agenda item at this time?
As of this time, Mr. Mayor, you have no public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. We will now move into agenda item number 6, our Board of Health meeting. Mr. Daffis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, also known as the Open Public Meetings Act, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the Bulletin Board of Municipal Building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2020 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2019, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk. Ms. Fritzen, the roll call, please.
Adams. Mr. DeLuca.
Here.
Lembrick. Mayor McGehee.
Here.
I'm here, by the way. I was on.
Okay. Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. The resolution regarding public participation, please.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies to be open to the public. And whereas Section 7 provides that the Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public in any meeting. And whereas it is the desire of the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provisions of this act and same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Maplewood Board of Health, Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in deliberations of the Board of Health by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the Board of Health at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Adams. Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Glenbrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee,
Yes.
Mr. Zappis.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Our next item is the approval of the minutes from our March 3rd meeting. I move the approval of the minutes unless there are any objections.
I'll second.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Glenbrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGehee,
Yes.
Mr. Zappis.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. I invite our Public Health Officer, Candace Davenport. Candace, you have the Zoom in this case, not the floor.
Hello, thank you very much. Thank you, Board of Health President Dean Daffas. I just want to report to you on the most pressing issue of our coronavirus cases and our approach and how we've been doing thus far. We have had, as of tonight, 103 Maplewood families that have been impacted by the coronavirus disease. Several have recovered. We have about 8 families who have recovered. However, we have had 2 deaths, and those losses are significant. I want to emphasize that we are doing good work in terms of emphasizing social distancing and encouraging and closing any type of recreational or congregate gatherings. I think we're going to need to do more of that as people need to understand the gravity of what we're dealing with. I want to remind and hearken on the fact that Governor Murphy has put in stronger recommendations to close school indefinitely for the rest of the school year. And I think that that's poignant enough to say that we are in this for a long haul and for a long time. We currently have our highest number of cases in the state of New Jersey as of today. We have 44,416 residents who have been impacted. And 1,232 deaths, and those deaths will only increase, unfortunately, and those numbers will continue to rise. As always, we're here as a resource. I can't thank enough Anna Markarova and the support that we've gotten from our administrator and our Department of Community Services and the Township Committee. And I'm here to answer any questions you have at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Lumber.
Ms. Davenport, while I realize it's not a public document, the situation report that came out from the county tonight reported 3 Maplewood deaths. Are we
Mr. Lumbrick, you're breaking up unless someone else heard the question and
Yes. Yes. So I think what he said is the situation awareness report that came out today said that Maplewood had 3 deaths.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying that we had 2.
Yes, I can clarify that. So as we've mentioned, and we've corrected that with County OEM, I don't know why they didn't correct it as of the 7 o'clock report, situational report, but they go through the program that we all go through for our case reporting system, which is called CDRS. It's the Communicable Disease Report System. They pull from that what they cull from just the reporting of data. What we had yesterday, and we rectified it, was a resident that was improperly coded as their address being in Maplewood. It took us significant time because of the incorrect data to, one, track down the family member and next of kin because the hospital had incorrect data and so did the lab. And then we identified that this family that we spoke with, not only did they suffer a death in their family, which was a great loss, but they also weren't in our township. And so we dealt with that as compassionately as we could. But for some reason, the county OEM is counting that as our death because they haven't changed it on their form. But we have told them at the county several times today that our number is 2, and that is the correct number, not 3. I hope that answered your question, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Davenport.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. I just want
It
to
does, thank you.
add to Ms. Davenport's point. Sorry, Mr. Limbrick, I didn't mean to talk over you. I just want to add to Ms. Davenport's point is that, we do get inquiries about these numbers, and we do understand the county is providing numbers to certain parties, but I want to stress to everyone that unless the numbers come from Ms. Davenport and myself, then those numbers aren't the most accurate numbers. And as she articulated, there was a discrepancy there, but the numbers in which our health division provides, those are the accurate numbers, regardless if they come from the county or the state. So just want to emphasize that. I want to thank both Ms. Davenport and Anna for their efforts. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Davenport? Mr. Waltz, do we have any member of the public with a question for Ms. Davenport?
Mr. Davis, at this time, you have no public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. At this point, I move that we adjourn our Board of Public Health meeting and again on May 5th, 2020.
Second.
Mr. DeLuca? Mr. DeLuca?
Yes. Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
Stafford?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen, and thank you, Mr. Daffis. We are now on agenda item number 7. We have an ordinance on final passage.
Yes, Mayor, it's ordinance number 2992-20. It's an ordinance licensing and regulating the sale of vaping products. This ordinance will require the licensing of business entities seeking to sell vaping products within the township of Maplewood.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Mr. Waltz, do we have anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Regulating
Mr.
the
Mayor, you
sale-
have no public comment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Waltz?
You have no public comment.
Thank you. Hearing no one, we will now close the public hearing. Can I have a motion, Mr. Daffis?
Yes, Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish it as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Any discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Zappis?
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca?
Yes.
Lembrick?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We have another ordinance, agenda item number 8 on final passage.
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance number 2993-20. An ordinance to regulate the use of certain non-reusable food and beverage accessories. This ordinance will regulate the use of plastic straws, plastic stirrers, and single use of food and beverage accessories within the township of Maplewood.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Would anyone, Mr. Waltz, do we have anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance regulating plastic straw stirrers, single-use food and beverage accessories?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. Hearing no one, we will now close the public hearing. And I have a motion, please, Mr. Daffis.
Mayor, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion?
Dapkus,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fritzen.
Don't
We are
get
now
ahead of
on
your
agenda
mayor,
item
Ms.
number
Fritzen.
We are now on agenda item number 9, also an ordinance on final.
Mayor, it's ordinance number 2994-20, an ordinance to amend chapter 123 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Fees. This ordinance will establish the sewer fees beginning in the year 2020.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance to the law. Mr. Waltz, do we see anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance regarding sewer fees beginning in 2020?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Waltz. Hearing no one, we will now close the public hearing. And I have a motion, please, Mr. DeLuca.
Yes. I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
I'll second it. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just would like to say, in just a minute or so, we're going to introduce a capital ordinance putting $1.4 million plus into our sewer system for repairs. What this ordinance does here is we're adding a capital surcharge to the annual fee for the next 3 years to be able to cover that $1.4+ million.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Mr. Dapkus,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We are now on agenda item number 10, introduction of a new ordinance.
Mayor, ordinance number 2995-20, bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $6,170,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $5,892,000 in bonds or notes to the Township to finance part of the cost thereof.
Mr. DeLuca, may I have a motion, please?
Yeah. Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and the hearing to be held on April 21st, 2020.
Thank you. I'll second that. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Mr. Dapkus,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We now have another ordinance, agenda item number 11, on introduction.
Mayor, it's ordinance number 2996-20, bond ordinance providing for various sewer improvements in and by the Township of Maplewood in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $1,417,500 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,346,625 in bonds or notes to the Township to finance part of the cost thereof.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Mr. DeLuca, may I have a motion, please?
Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on April 21st, 2020.
Thank you. I'll second it. Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Mr. Dapkus,
Yes.
Mr. DeLuca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, and thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Okay, we'll now move into reports from departments. We did receive a document from Mr. Kaloje regarding some of the resolutions on tonight's agenda. Are there any other reports that we should be reviewing that I'm not aware of, Mr. Farrells?
No, that was all. If anybody needs additional explanation, I'd be glad to answer any questions at this time. That's from the memo our finance director provided to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Veros. And you know what? That's a good segue into agenda item number 13, administrative report. So why don't you continue with the floor?
Sure. Just for the sake of providing some information for the public, I'll start off with the first resolution, which is 9520, and that's to suspend the bank charge for online tax and sewer payments of $1.05. So those are the typical direct transfers from banks. So we're going to suspend that during this time. The second resolution, 8120, that's the adoption of a temporary capital budget. Given that we have an extension from the state to introduce the budget in May, we do want to go ahead with our capital projects. As such, you see that we had an ordinance for sewer improvements. In order for us to go out and bid and get the work done while the weather is improving, it would be prudent that we have the capital budget in place, at least temporary for now. The third resolution, 8020, it's to amend the temporary budget. We are putting in some accounts up to 100% and up to 50% of this, which is actually doubling up what we are allowed to in a temporary budget, which is 26.25, only because if in fact we introduce and I'm assuming we are introducing the budget in early May, we're at least half the year. So we want to make sure that during this crisis there's no shortage of funds that we need to use in order to get some of these things moving along. There is a couple of other items on the other resolution items. Some of those are with regard to tax overpayments. Others are with regards to hiring of personnel. This is typically things new processes that we've enacted in order to properly report to pensions. So that covers the finance report. My report, Mayor, I just have one item, and that's to just update Township Committee and the public with regard to township operations. As you know, that the governor has deemed municipal employees or municipal operations essential. So that means that we are operating. However, it is business, not necessarily business as usual, but we are working remotely. So typically on a day now, we have about a third of staff in town hall in order to, and the other 2/3, they are working remotely. When they are not physically in the offices, calls are being forwarded. We're answering emails. We're having WebEx meetings throughout the day. So we are still operating and fully functional. With regard to other essential personnel, for example, DPW, I've given them a directive that they are to only work in groups of 2. It is often difficult because they do drive together in the same vehicle, but I've asked that if they make every effort to just use one vehicle, and we're trying to work with that. We also just received additional PPE from the fire department, who generously donated 50 N95 masks to DPW. We're trying to work along with the shortage too, so we've been trying to get all resources from everywhere, if you will. I'm also working with our GIF to try to get some resources. That would include the plastic shields, face masks, and some gowns. So I'm looking forward to working with them on that. If you don't have any other questions, or the Township Committee doesn't have any other questions, that's all I have for my report, Mayor.
Ms. Viveros, are there any questions for Ms. Viveros? Okay. Hearing none, thank you again. We appreciate your report and also appreciate you working diligently to find that balance between this COVID-19 pandemic and also helping us to keep our town running. This town has to run, and it's part of making sure that we keep our community safe and providing our community with the resources that it needs to move forward. And especially now with most people staying at home, we need those resources more than ever. So thank you for your efforts. Thank you for being thoughtful in terms of having that balance between keeping everyone safe and also keeping our town running. So thank you, Mr. Veros.
Thank you.
Mr. Desiderio.
Yeah, just real quick, Mayor. I just wanted to report, consistent with what is going on everywhere else. The court system is effectively closed for appearances. The courts are open, and judges are going in and doing some conferences and things of that nature. But anything that's essentially on the docket is being put off. As an example, tax court matters and things of that nature. So nothing's really happening, and I would anticipate the Chief Justice will probably sign an order consistent with what Governor Murphy did with regard to extending the time. So it's really kind of everything on hold for right now. Other than that, I don't have anything else, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Desiderio? Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Desiderio. We appreciate it. Ms. Fritzen.
Mayor, thank you. So the Office of the Township Clerk continues to strive to serve the Maplewood public. And I think we're doing a good job as far as online applications and follow through. And of course, using the drop boxes for residents to return forms and things. Surprisingly, I have to note that there is absolutely no shortage of open public record requests, which does surprise me. But with everything that's going on, it seems that our level for open public record requests continues to soar. And we're taking the time, of course, to fill those according to the law. Thank you all. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Fritzen. Does anyone have any more questions or any additional questions for Ms. Fritzen? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And also thank you, Ms. Fritzen, for being at Town Hall and helping to keep things running. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We will now move into agenda item number 14, reports from elected officials. Mr. DeLuca.
No report.
Mr. DeLuca. Mr. Limbrick.
No report for me.
Thank you, Mr. Limbrick. Mr. Daffis.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick report. I wanted to talk a little bit about our small businesses in town and how we continue to support efforts to get information to them as it relates to both state and federal relief efforts, eligibility criteria, and the application process, which still remains pretty complicated, but the details are starting to flow through. And conversations are happening and applications are beginning. And I acknowledge Mr. DeLuca's spearheading this effort and getting us off the ground and hosting a very successful town hall or virtual town hall or webinar last week, I think it was. I've lost track of days, on which we had over 150 participants. As you're aware, Mayor, the other part of the equation is our property owners and our landlords. We want to be equitable here in our outreach and make sure that everybody's working together during this time, supporting each other. So today we got together with our SID managers and our Chamber of Commerce to discuss a fulsome landlord outreach here in town. Ms. Julie Doran joined us from South Orange side as well. A lot of our property owners obviously are MAPSO owners, not just in Maplewood. So we hope to bridge gaps there and to get everyone to be working together and being flexible and equitable during these uncertain times. We continue our efforts to support vulnerable members of our community. On the senior side, I can report that we have already helped over 43 seniors or 43 households of seniors. That assistance included rides to doctors, to the supermarkets. It included with food deliveries and shopping. We have a lot of volunteers doing shopping for seniors and delivering those food items appropriately curbside using social distancing as is appropriate. There is a wellness check effort underway by volunteers, and we're trying to get some of our youth groups involved here, so the effort is intergenerational. And this will include phone calls to seniors that we have contacts of, as well as written cards by our scouts in town, which I thought was a really beautiful idea that's being led by one of our new members on our senior advisory committee, Sydney Larry, the daughter of a famous Larrier, former township committee woman, India Larrier. So things are going really well on that side. As you all know, we received a very generous donation from one of our residents. Speaks to our community solidarity out there right now, to help those experiencing some housing issues right now as it relates to rent arrears and making ends meet during this crisis. And I can report that our human services coordinator is working with at least 2 such households in Maplewood and will be able to assist anywhere between 8 and 10 households with that money that was generously provided to our Maplewood Cares Fund. I want to give a shout out to King's in particular. I know we're not supposed to talk about one business over another, but King's has really been great in terms of helping during this crisis with deliveries, waiving fees, and especially being great about that early hour preference for senior shopping. They've been absolutely terrific to everyone's needs. And my final item relates to our SOMA 2 Towns for All Ages initiative, Mayor. The management team committee finally came to a conclusion with respect to our future with the initiative. The management team committee has overwhelmingly, by majority vote, advisory vote, of course, accepted the recommendation of our senior coordinator, Ms. Rowe, to move forward with 2 part-time coordinators, one for each town, both of them reporting to the management team that currently exists. The idea here is to better serve each town's particular needs, to work with each particular town's administrative differences, and come to even a more comprehensive solution in terms of age-friendly and healthy initiatives for everyone in Maplewood South Orange. So the recommendation by the senior coordinator and the management team committee's vote is to move forward with that as soon as possible. As I understand it, our coordinator is willing to accept that. And as the committee is aware, as you all are aware, we already have received at least $60K of our next round of funding and our final round of funding from the Grota Fund. And that could be split into 2 pieces, $30K each, to cover 1 part-time coordinator for each town. And with that, that's my report. I entertain questions.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. Any questions for Mr. Daffis?
Yeah, I just, hearing the report on the SOMA 2 Towns, I think for me, it's a little disappointing because we were trying to move in the other direction, but I guess that's it.
Well, Mayor, I'm glad you said that, and I want to definitely address that issue because it sounds like we're moving away from a shared service, but we're not moving away from a shared service. But the coordinator has made it very clear that beyond the fact that everything must evolve, right? Everything evolves. The coordinator made it clear that as this initiative has become really successful, it's impossible for one person to meet all the needs. Because there are administrative differences with each town, and because each advisory committee sort of works in a different way. Maplewood does great in terms of, the recreational aspect of it. South Orange does really great in terms of the social working aspect of it, social work and outreach. They actually hired a part-time social worker right now. And so the idea is to have two people working together, still reporting to the management team, addressing one community in MAPSO. So actually, we'll get more bang for our buck with two part-time people. That's the idea anyway. So with that, I'd like to address Ms. Viveros, if I may, Mayor. So what is the process moving forward, Ms. Viveros, in terms of starting to look into implementing this for the rest of the year?
I'm sorry, your phone, are you asking me? And so your phone broke up.
Yep, I'll repeat the question. So my question is, what is the next step in terms of implementing this for later on this year?
From what I understand, you would have to then start a hiring process in order to solicit for candidates. Are we looking to do this at the later end of the year, 2021?
I think we're looking to do this as soon as we can, so that we can get two people up and running while Ms. Rowe is still with us, and she can sort of get them up to speed and carry on that way.
Okay, is there a timetable? So just so I know about internal advertising and then external and so forth.
We haven't discussed a timetable. I think we wanted to be flexible, especially under the circumstances of what's going on right now. The idea was definitely not to wait until 2021.
Okay. Okay, can we talk offline, you and I, about the next steps in terms of hiring?
Most certainly.
About a job description. Yeah, we'll need a job description also if one hasn't been worked on yet.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions from Mr. Daffis? Okay, Mr. Daffis, thank you. Just a couple quick things. I want to thank our residents for their efforts in the U.S. Census. We're off to a pretty strong start. In fact, of our 6 tracks, we have one of our areas of town is the highest response rate in all of Essex County at 74.6%. That's over in the Midland Boulevard area and Kensington Park area. So thank you so much for your efforts. But our ranges are anywhere from 46% to that 74-75%. So, please continue to take a few minutes and go ahead and fill out the U.S. Census. It's very critical for funding. It's for how we're represented down in D.C. And this is not funding just for 1 year. It's funding for the next decade for you and your family and your household. So if you haven't done it already, please take 10, take 5. Fill it out online. There are more communications that will be coming out from the U.S. Census Department soon, but please, if you can, we appreciate that. I also want to thank the residents in zones 4 through 6, for their patience and also, their adapting to our new recycling policy. I know it's a crazy time with everything else happening. I saw one comment saying, Tuesday, I don't even know what day it is anymore. So, I thought that was pretty funny. But, again, this is part of building, enhancing our efficiencies with our recycling program. There's more to come. but this is just our first step, and I just want to thank the residents in those particular zones. I also just want to take a second to thank really all the residents for all your efforts during this pandemic. We have residents donating money, donating time, tutoring online, making masks, and really what's really happening is helping in some way bring our community together. And I can't be more proud of being a Maplewood resident than I am now with just the effort that we're doing collectively to practice social distancing. And for those who haven't totally embraced it yet, please do help us, help you, help each other. It's so important. We're fighting for people's lives, and most importantly, and equally important rather, we're fighting for our first responders in health, our first responders and our healthcare team who is trying to manage a pandemic. And if we don't do our part, then we're just going to overburden our health providers, and we won't be able to sustain our lives as we know it. So please do your part, help them, help each other, and practice social distancing and stay home as much as you can outside of essential needs and exercise as well. From a operations perspective, we had a meeting last week, our Committee on Entrepreneurship and Economic Development, and we did a deeper dive into the Maplewood Village plan, which was provided to us by the state. We will be moving forward, looking at some initiatives inclusive of revisiting parking. We know that's a hot topic for a particular area in our community, and we will just start to do subcommittees and move forward with that. So, we're also having a public safety meeting tomorrow night. So the Township Committee, Mr. Limbrick, Mr. DeLuca, Mr. Dathis, and the staff, we're moving forward with the business of governing, even under a pandemic. And I want to thank my colleagues for their efforts. And speaking of colleagues, I would be remiss if I don't mention our Assistant Township Administrator, Glenn Malalowski. He's done a phenomenal job with bringing us from the offline to the online here, not just in this meeting, but numerous meetings that we have that are both public and private. And I just wanted to personally recognize his efforts. You have been amazing, and the Township of Maplewood appreciates you, and the resident of Maplewood should know that you've done a phenomenal job. So thank you, Glenn. And with that, that is my report. And we will now move on to agenda item number 15, our discussion item on the Burdorf plan. Mr. Dathis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for you, Mayor. $1 million question. How is our response rate on the census compared to South Orange? Where are we?
Since you asked, these are numbers through yesterday evening. The nation is at 45.1%. New Jersey is at 46.2%. Essex County is at 39.6%. And Maplewood, collectively, cumulatively, is at 57.3%. And we are trailing South Orange by 1.5%, where they cumulatively are coming in at 58.8%. So essentially, outside of South Orange, we are beating the nation, we're beating New Jersey, and we're beating Essex County.
Thank you, Mayor. We will catch up. I know we will. There is a digital divide in town that's real. Part of that, that 1.5% probably has to do a little bit with that at least. So discussion items, the Bergdorf plan. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because there really isn't a lot to say. I don't know if you all had an opportunity to go through the deed. I want to thank Mr. Desiderio again for providing us a lot of background information. I also took some time to do some additional research to get the history of the center myself. And the bottom line is, look, yes, the strollers have every right to be there, and we're not interested in kicking them out. The idea is to have some conversations and to see if we can all coexist. That's all. The idea is to compromise, coexist, and find something that works out. Again, as we reported a few weeks back now, seems like eons ago, there are theater companies who are very interested in coming to Maplewood to do business. And we have a lot of community support and talent who's interested in using that space as community theater for entertainment and also for therapy. And I think all of those possibilities can happen. We can work with the strollers. The idea, what we have to figure out is how we do that. Should we set up a committee? Should we set a couple people responsible to engage in those conversations? And through which of our other committees, our cultural affairs, our recreation, should we have those communications? So with that, I open it up.
So I suggested when you brought this up that you, as the head of the subcommittee on recreation, human services, which includes cultural affairs, and me as the liaison to the Arts Council, we meet with the strollers, lay everything on the line, and see exactly where we are with them.
Okay. That sounds great, Vic. And we'll plan that. I will reach out.
I think that's a good direction.
Great. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions or concerns?
I do think also that perhaps I believe the ad is coming to an end shortly, that we also mark this down as a goal for the new Director of Arts and Culture. So if we could just sort of like wait a little bit and get some input from who we hire or hope to hire in the near future.
Thanks, Ms. Viveros. I think that's a good point, although I think we can probably do both efforts in parallel tracks, right? We don't have to get too far in the planning, obviously, but I think we should start engaging in those conversations. I mean, where are we with the hiring process, by the way?
It should be near end because the last time I looked at it, we're probably maybe a week or 10 days away.
The deadline is April 17th.
Correct.
Okay, I'm good with that. We'll all connect offline and get it done.
Yeah, so I think the other person that we might want to reach out to is Lisa Minardi, who's our event coordinator, just to have her give us some feedback on the request to use Bergdorf, so we have a big enough picture of who's asking to use it, and all that.
Terrific, great idea, absolutely.
Mr. Daffis, she does have a spreadsheet of all of the different activities, so that probably would be helpful. I'm sure she could provide that to you.
Great. I will definitely engage Ms. Minardi in this, absolutely. Thank you all. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Daffis. We will now move on to agenda item number 16. May I get a motion to move the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I move all items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Daffis,
Mr. Daffis.
You're on mute.
Consent agenda.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Mr. Luca,
Yes.
Mr. Lembrick,
Yes.
Mayor McGee.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fritzen. We are now at the second public comment, but I would like to recognize Ms. Burnett from Essex County, who's joined us this evening. Ms. Burnett, you have the floor if you'd like to make some remarks.
It looks like we lost her a couple minutes ago, Mayor.
Too bad, I didn't see that we lost her. Okay, but for the record, we know that she was in attendance. We do appreciate her efforts along with the county, especially during the COVID-19. She's reached out several times to me that would need and be very receptive to any request. So thank you to Ms. Burnett. Mr. Walsh, do we have any other public comments at this time?
At this time, Mr. Mayor, you have no public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. At this point, I will now entertain agenda item number 18, which is for adjournment. May I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. The ayes have it. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Aye.
Good night.
Hey, Nick, you can kill the stream.
Good night.